Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of the Saturdays and Stores podcast, which you can find right here on the Court Store Media Network. I'm your host, Kanaye, and UConn took home a gutsy win last night against Tom Izzo and the Michigan State Spartans after nearly blowing an early 19-point lead in the first half. UConn comes away with a 67-63 win over the Spartans to set up a matchup with Duke in the Elite Eight for a chance to get to Indianapolis and play in the Final Four. Now, a lot to get into in today's episode between the recap of last night's game as well as a preview for their game on Sunday against Duke in the Elite Eight. But before we get into all that, just a couple quick messages. First, us here at the Core Storm, we partner with First Form Energy to tell you about all the great products they have to offer. Whether you're someone who likes to hit the gym, just wants to stay active, or just someone who needs to stay motivated and energized, First Form has the products that you need, whether it's amino acids, other fitness supplements, pre-workout, protein powder, fitness apparel. First Form has all of your fitness needs, and you can check more of their products out on their full website, which I'm going to be plugging in our description box below. On top of that, of course, everyone knows how important the algorithm is on YouTube for getting more people to see our videos. So just engage with the content you see on this channel in any way you can. Liking, subscribing, and telling other people about us really goes a long way in getting more people to see what we put out. Also, be sure to turn on your post notifications so you're the first to see our latest content. So let's get right into it. Of course, UConn won 67-63 in the Sweet 16 against Michigan State. Now, Michigan State decided to, or I should say opted to roll out more of a lengthier, taller lineup where they decided to go with Jordan Scott starting over Kurtang, despite how well Kurtang had shot the ball to start the NCAA tournament. Now, Kurtang was really not a factor whatsoever in last night's game. Obviously, I just think that Caravan posed such a big matchup problem when you consider that you got to ask either one of Jackson Kohler or Carson Cooper, whoever switched on to AK, to chase him around all the actions that they run Caravan through. And I think that, again, I mean, this is something I highlighted in the preview going into this game. Alex Caravan was going to get good shots. It was going to be a matter if he hit them or not. And for the most part, he hit them. He finished with 17 points, 6 for 12 overall, 3 of 8 from beyond the arc. And let me say, I mean, there's a world where he knocks down a couple more threes and finishes with 20. He should have with how some of the balls, which might or might not be overinflated, as a lot of players and coaches have complained this tournament. But a lot of AK's threes rimmed in and out. I mean, there was one ball specifically that I was halfway down and just spun out after kind of going the toilet bowl route and spinning 3 times around the rim. But nonetheless, I mean, you just got an incredible performance from both your seniors. This is really just another display of the 2 seniors on this team, 2 of the leaders, not wanting their college careers to end and really playing with their college basketball lives on the line. That's exactly what we got from AK and Terrace Reed last night. Before I touch more on those guys, I really do think that this game was a great encapsulation of just what this season has been overall, especially from what we've seen out of this year's team. This game reminded me so much of when I went to TD Garden and watched them take on BYU early in the non-conference schedule. Just both games, UConn takes an early lead, and you're thinking, man, we might finally see a true full 40 minutes out of this UConn team. And of course, that's not what happened last night. UConn got up to what I believe was a 25-6 lead at one point in the first half. And early on, I just felt UConn was getting incredible shots. Their discipline defensively was outstanding. They forced Michigan State to be in the mindset where Jeremy Fears was looking to score rather than facilitate. And it's kind of similar with how you game plan for Donovan Dent, where I think you look to try to make him score, something that he's not as comfortable doing, rather than someone who's going to go out and dish out 9, 10, 11 assists in any given game. I think early on, I mean, just the job they did in really shutting down the post between what Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper can do against you. I mean, it was top notch, and UConn just did an incredible job defending during that run. Now, I think one of the most impressive things for me to take away out of this game was just seeing Solo Ball and Braylon Mullins on early. Solo Ball knocked down his first 2 threes of the game. He went 2 for 5 overall, but still, he had some really tough takes to the basket throughout the game, and he finished with 12 points. And man, it's just so good to see Solo Ball find some success where it feels like it's been forever since we've seen Solo Ball play confidently. That's what we got last night. He had 1 3 in the corner early on, and then he hit a deep 3, which is it was just a shot with a high degree of difficulty, and he was able to bang that home to give UConn some more breathing room when he hit that to expand the lead in the first half. Now, I thought what you got out of Terrace and AK to get back to those 2 guys was really incredible. I mean, listen, Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper aren't pushovers, but Terrace Reed, I mean, really had his way with them last night. Just the job he did sealing, some of the footwork he displayed last night was beyond anything I think I've ever seen from Terrace. And that's just incredible because it just shows you the work he's put in. It shows you how far he's grown, even in this season alone. And he's playing like a top center in the country right now. And I've been vocal on this podcast. I've come out and said when Terrace is at his ceiling, he's a top three center in the sport. And that's what we've been getting out Terrace in this NCAA tournament. So it's great to see. So happy for Terrace. I mean, what a game he had. He knocked down actually four massive free throws down the stretch of this game when UConn really, really needed it to, prevent Michigan State from fully coming back in the end and winning the game. Michigan State did take the lead twice in the second half, but UConn was able to not waver and ultimately come away with the win. Airband hit a huge, huge three from deep late in the game. He knocked down some big free throws at the line as well to increase the cushion going down the stretch of the game. And I felt, you got some bench production out of this game. I thought Malachi played some valuable minutes. He did have one bad turnover early on, which is another thing. UConn did turn the ball over 10 times in this game. But I think a lot of this is still just unforced turnovers, mistakes that can't happen. And, hopefully that they fix that going into Sunday because Duke is going to exploit UConn if they are not locked in offensively and they are turning the ball over. So going back to the bench production, we saw Jalen Stewart play some minutes for the first time in a while. Obviously, he was dealing with that knee injury for really close to the last month. And he got his first minutes of action in the NCAA tournament this year last night. He played 3 minutes. He had one big three from the corner, and he was able to get to the line and knock down a free throw as well. Eric Ryba, he didn't get much out of, and this is a tough match for Eric Ryba. He struggled in that exhibition game before the season started against Michigan State in their front court. So I can kind of understand why Eric definitely, maybe just wasn't really ready for this type of a game. But Jaden Ross, you got the good defensive minutes out of him. Didn't really see him score like we have in the past couple NCAA tournament games. So hopefully he's a big factor off the bench. He could be someone like a Ruben Prey if you watch the St. John's Duke game last night. Ruben Prey came off the bench, just had a stellar game, going 4 for 4 from three. Maybe that's something we could see out of Jay Ross tomorrow night. But yeah, I mean, Braylon, I felt Braylon got good shots. He didn't force as much as he kind of was earlier in this tournament in the first weekend. And it was good to see him knock down a couple threes early. I think he made his first three of the game. He might have made his first two. And he hit a really big three with the shot clock running down in the second half to give UConn, I think, a 4-point lead at that point in the game. And obviously, I mean, first time this tournament, UConn's made shots. They were able to make shots. And that's just so important. And what you're continuing to get out of both Alex Karaban and Terrace Reed. Listen, I know Terrace Reed had that really, really loud 31 and 27 performance, but if you're talking about who's probably been the best across the three games, it's been Alex Karaban. And so happy for him. It's great to see a legend in the program, Husky of Honor, someone who a lot of people have had conversations for really 3 years now as to whether he's an NBA player or not. I mean, he's playing his way to being probably a mid-second round pick right now, maybe at highest or an early second round pick. We'll see what transpires as we get closer to this summer's draft. But still, it's very clear. Terrace and AK, they don't want their college careers to end, and they're playing like that. And what you've gotten out of both those two guys the last three games now, it's been stellar. And you need it going forward for tomorrow. You need to turn. You have to be in a position where you can just fall back on your leadership because tomorrow is going to be a tough game against the Duke Blue Devils. Terrace Reed, it's what he's done to establish himself as a true, just low post monster where you could throw the ball to him and you trust that he's going to put you in a position where there's going to be an added 2 points to your total, or he's going to take a trip to the line. And he's been knocking down the free throw shot more consistently this tournament than he was in the regular season. I don't want to call it Sonogo-esque because I don't know if anyone can really do what Sonogo did in 2023 in the tournament. But I mean, really, he's kind of on that path right now with the way it's been. And we hope he obviously keeps it up going into tomorrow night against Duke. Now, really, I just think that UConn, they're lacking an energy guy. And that's been one of the biggest caveats with this team this year. I've talked about this countless times on this podcast this year. They're missing the Cam, they're missing DeAndre. This lead probably doesn't get blown. The 19-point lead they started with in the first half. That lead does not get blown if they have a guy like that on the roster. Now, unfortunately, UConn is not the beneficiary of having someone like that on the team this year. And I think that just, again, kind of goes back to you needing to fall back on your senior leaders and them not wavering when things get tough, not breaking. And obviously, that led to UConn being able to take home this win. I just think that, I mean, defensively down the stretch, they were able to find, ways to get stops. They were able to find ways to get to the rim and draw a foul. They were able to knock down some clutch threes between Braylon, Caravan. And I think that's just been, like, again, one of the biggest things we've seen from this UConn team this year, where they might take big leads. They'll probably end up blowing them. But in the end, they find a way to gut it out and win. And hey, people can say what they want about the Big East this year, but I don't know if any team left in the tournament has played as many close games as the UConn Huskies this year. And I mean, obviously, we saw every game in Big East play. UConn was challenged. They were, they got everyone's best. UConn is everyone's Super Bowl in the Big East. And I think that really, despite them playing down to their level of competition, those teams not being nearly as good as the teams that are left in the NCAA tournament field, playing in those types of situations, it prepares you for March, where you're not wavered when you end up in a situation where a team is coming back or a game is close going down the wire. You know that you had a history of finding ways to win and knowing how to execute and ultimately get stops when you really need to get them, or hit shots or draw fouls and get to the line when you really need to. And I think that's something that is invaluable. People can say what they want about the Big East, but those games prepared UConn for a scenario like we saw last night against the Spartans. And hopefully, going forward, I think if UConn has any chance of winning, it's probably in a close game against Duke. And hopefully that prepares them for tomorrow night too, if UConn finds himself in that boat once again. Silas Demery made his first start last night, following him coming off the bench against UCLA and missing the Furman game in the first weekend. Silas is still very very obviously still a step slow. I think he is still a little hobbled following the injury he suffered in the Big East championship against St. John's. I still felt he played some really valuable minutes. He didn't turn the ball over too much, only 2. He only finished with 3 assists and 3 rebounds, but 2 points. I know he is probably a step slow, but he's a warrior for battling out there. 2 of the best point guards in the country he's had to face in back-to-back games, and an emerging one in Caden Boozer coming up tomorrow, and Caleb Foster. Obviously, we know how impactful Caleb Foster is, like we saw in the St. John's game. More on that very soon. But I still think Silas needs to look to call his own number a little bit more often. I think he's, again, really one of the only guys, he probably is the only guy on this team that is capable of really consistently being able to get a paint touch and get to the cup. And I think he needs to look to do that more. I worry that maybe it's still in the back of his mind that he took a hard drive to the rim against Zuby Ejiofor when he ultimately ended up getting hurt just a couple weeks back now in the Big East Championship. And I worry that, might still be in his psyche and kind of making him feel like he has to defer from really attacking on hard-nosed drives. But he needs to look to get back to that. I think he needs to look for a shot more often. There were many opportunities last night for him to take it from 3, and he kind of passed it up. And I just think a lot of that, too, is a lot of people, including myself, felt he turned the corner following the Providence game. But I still think he really is still trying to decipher when to be in a scoring mindset and when to be in a passing mindset. And in games where, like last night in the second half, felt like there were stretches where UConn could not hit a shot. Silas needs to be on the floor, needs to be in the mindset that, hey, I got to go and get a bucket to give my team the best chance of winning here. And I know he's capable of it. We saw him do it at Georgia. We saw him do it at points in several games this year against BYU, against Providence. He's capable of it. I know he is. And for UConn to have a legit chance to win both tomorrow night and if they are able to win the national championship, Silas needs to know when he needs to look to take over. That's what he knew was so good at. And I know Silas can get there too. But I think that pretty much takes care of everything that I had regarding the Michigan State recap. I mean, just being able to, I just think, defend them overall so well, especially their post players between Kohler and Cooper. They just did such a strong job in that they really limited the 3-point shot, which is one of the biggest caveats with the Spartans program this year. Granted, they had been shooting the ball incredibly well leading up to this game last night, but I think in the end, a lot of the narrative surrounding Michigan State basketball this year rang true regarding their shooting, and they really did not get any production from their bench whatsoever. It wasn't pretty. You obviously would have hoped that UConn would have just expanded that lead and ran the Spartans out the gym. Would have made me feel, and I'm sure all of Husky Nation feel, a lot more comfortable regarding their chances going into tomorrow's game against Duke. But in the end, a win is a win, especially in the NCAA tournament. And now UConn is playing in their 3rd Elite 8 in the last 4 years. So let's get on to the Duke preview now. Obviously, Duke took home a win, a gutsy win, I should add, over the St. John's Red Storm last night in the Sweet 16 in Washington, D.C., excuse me. Now, I know I was kind of in the boat where I said I wanted St. John's to win this game, but I do think this probably did play in UConn's favor. St. John's knows how to scout UConn. Duke has never played UConn this year. UConn is an incredibly tough one day prep, in the NCAA tournament. I mean, with all the actions that they run, the different fallback options they have on their sets, it's just so tough to game plan for UConn defensively that it plays into UConn's advantage. UConn again is kind of in the boat where they played St. John's 3 times this year. Had St. John's won last night. Obviously, they do need to brush up their scouting reports. They need to look to add some things into the game plan. But for the most part, they know what St. John's is at this point in the year, having played them 3 times now. Duke, I'm sure, is probably someone that Hurley started game prepping for much earlier than today. Assuming that we know how to scout St. John's, got to get a jump start on Duke. So I'm assuming both him and the coaching staff have circulated and gotten, accumulated everything needed to set up a good game plan for tomorrow's game against Duke. I just think, Duke's defense, it's been incredible this year. I believe they are the number one defense in the country per KenPom. And they just completely took St. John's out of what they normally like to do last night. St. John's really was in that game and had that lead, the 10-point lead at one point in the second half because of the 3-point shooting and the forced turnovers. But I mean, you got contributions from everyone around the floor on St. John's from beyond the arc. Dylan Darling had 2 threes. Ruben Prey hit 4. Zuby, I believe, might have knocked down 2 threes. You got Dylan Mitchell make his first 3 of the season. Bryce played pretty well as well. It was definitely an uncharacteristic performance from St. John's with how well they shot the basketball from 3 last night. And I think that was just Duke's mindset going into the game. Hey, we're going to take them out of what they normally like to do. We're going to force them to beat us with something they're not as comfortable doing or something that they might not be as good doing in taking the 3-point shot as opposed to pounding the glass down low. Pounding the post down low with Zuby and some of their other bigs on dribble drives. They completely cut off the driving lanes. No one was really able to attack. And that's something I think UConn needs to look to do. You gotta try to get both Pat Gungba, Cam Boozer. I'd even have Malik Brown to that. Malik Brown was stellar for Duke last night. He was so disruptive defensively. He's the guy that's going to be a problem tomorrow for UConn because UConn's kind of in the situation where they have Alex Caravan playing power forward, and one of either Cam Boozer or Pat Gungba is going to have to go and chase around Alex Caravan. Now, I think they could probably remedy that by bringing Malik Brown off the bench. We saw Malik Brown get the start last night over Pat Gungba, if I'm not mistaken. That's something that we could see once more on Sunday against Duke. And that's definitely I'm curious to see how Alex Caravan handles that matchup because I think Malik Brown, again, is probably going to be one of the better defenders that he's been faced up against this year, if not, honestly, the best. So it's going to be tough. You're going to have to look to Alex to get some good shots. I think he will in the minutes where he's either being defended by Boozer or Gungba, just because it's going to be tough for both those guys to stay with Caravan with how fast he can move, coming off screens and off pin downs and the staggers they run. So that's going to be one of the big themes for this game. I think he's going to get good shots. It's going to be a matter if he hits them. Not saying he has to replicate the UCLA performance, but if we can get something like we saw last night, I think that would put UConn in a really good spot. Harris Reed's going to be obviously another factor, just winning the paint battle. Duke completely blew St. John's out of the water between between their respective point differentials in the paint. Cam Boozer was honestly, not the biggest factor scoring wise. He got to the line, but in terms of his actual shots from the field, he wasn't the most efficient going up against Zuby Ejiofor, Dylan Mitchell, Bryce Hopkins, that trio in the front court for the Johnnies. But of course, we know, or actually before I get to that, other guys on Duke were able to get into the lane. I mean, they took St. John's off the dribble and were able to get to the rim really consistently. Caden Boozer did an exceptional job of being able to get downhill. And I mean, Caden Boozer, he's played incredibly in the NCAA tournament. He's been one of Duke's best players. I'd argue probably maybe their second behind Cam Boozer, maybe Isaiah Evans you throw in there too. But just what he's done and being able to he's a physical guard. He's 6'4". He can take you off the dribble. He likes getting to that little float shot. And Silas needs to be ready for that. He needs to be ready for Caleb Foster too, who obviously we got to see how Caleb Foster is health-wise following him playing 17, 18 minutes last night on the fractured foot in his first game back since that injury was initially announced. So, Silas, they need to buckle up, strap down defensively. Terrace and the bigs, they need to stay out of foul trouble because Cam Boozer gets a very, 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 very friendly whistle. I mean, it's Edie-esque. And I was telling Josh this off recording, a lot of these fouls, I mean, they're questionable calls. And I'll leave it at that. We kind of know the history of Duke being the beneficiary of a good whistle, a good relationship with the officials. We hope tomorrow night, UConn's not in a situation where they get screwed by that. But listen, there's a world where they could employ the Zach Edey game plan against Duke, where they just throw either Terrace or AK on Cam Boozer, and you just ask them to go take them one-on-one. You don't help, and you just completely shut off all the other options, like we saw UConn employ in the 2024 national championship against Purdue, where listen, they let Zach Edey go for 37. They lived with that. But at the end of the day, 3 beats 2. They shut down everyone else on the Boilermakers outside of Braden Smith. Fletcher Lawyer, I don't think made a shot in a game. Lance Jones is not really a factor. Guys off the bench for Purdue didn't really contribute all too much. And that's something that I think UConn needs to look to do tomorrow night, perhaps. I think you got to ask the combination of Terrace and Eric Ryba to probably just go and take Cam Boozer one-on-one. Try as hard as you can to just wall up and not foul. Just try to alter the shot. Even just putting your hands straight up and holding your ground is going to be enough to alter some shots. Cam Boozer is, of course, the National Player of the Year, the best freshman in the college freshman in the country, best college player this year, I should say. Well, we'll see what his NBA stock is like after the conclusion of the season. But listen, you can't get in foul trouble, because for UConn to have a legit chance, Terrace needs to be on the floor as often as possible. And he needs to be someone who, on the other end, needs to look to put Cam Boozer, Pat Gongba, and Malik Brown in foul trouble as much as possible. Also, just think you need to look to see some more continued confidence out of Solo Ball. I felt last night's performance was massive for just his psyche and being able to see the shot go down after arguably his worst game as a Husky against UCLA, when he went 0 for 5 and just was a complete liability on both ends of the floor. I just think that him being able to see the shot go down, I mean, we've already seen it from Braylon being able to see the shot go down against UCLA as the game went on. I mean, he obviously didn't finish with his largest scoring total last night, but he looked a lot more confident than he was against Furman and in the early stretches against UCLA. So just continued shot making from those two guys is going to be key. Defending Cam Boozer, not fouling, shutting down the other guys. Don't let Evans spring out in transition where you can get a good look off from 3. And you got to cut off the driving lanes. Got to stay in front of Caden. Got to stay in front of Caleb. You can't let Caleb out-tough you like he out-toughed the Johnnies on several possessions down the stretch, getting offensive rebounds. And you gotta look to your bench to give you some production. J. Ross, Dewey, I think they're both going to be massive in this game. Malachi, I worry for Malachi on the defensive end. I hope he's going to be able to handle the physicality that Caden Boozer plays with. But listen, this is a winnable game. Duke's opening up right now as 5.5-point favorites tomorrow night on Sunday. UConn can win this game, man. I believe we made it this far. Why not get to the Final Four? Why not go and win it all? So, I think that's pretty much going to take care of everything that I had on this episode. Super pumped for tomorrow's game. Not very often we get to see UConn and Duke. I'm sure, I speak for all of Husky Nation by saying that can't stand the Duke Blue Devils, and let's shock the world like 1999, get this win, get to Indianapolis to go get number 7. But until the next episode, see you all next time.